2:24 a.m. The Strait of Hormuz is a black void, silent and suffocating. Inside the Combat Information Center of the USS Jack H. the only light comes from the soft blue glow of tactical displays. The air is chilled to 40 degrees to protect the massive computer banks humming beneath the floorboards. A single green sweep on the AN/SPOI-6 radar screen cuts through the electronic fog. A massive thermal signature has just breached the western edge of the exclusion zone. It isn't a warship. It is a Chinese supertanker, 300 meters of steel carrying 2 million barrels of crude oil. But it isn't sailing alone. Flanking the tanker like wolves in the night are two Type 052D destroyers from the People's Liberation Army Navy. Their radars are active, their missile hatches are warm, and their intent is unmistakable. If the US Navy fires on these ships, the global energy market will disintegrate by sunrise. If they do nothing, the blockade is dead, and the American era in the Persian Gulf is over. This is Waveborn Command. Tonight we are standing at the absolute edge of a world-altering conflict. To understand the danger, you have to understand the ground beneath us. The Strait of Hormuz is a 21-mile wide throat that connects the world's oil to the world's hunger. Every single day, 25% of the planet's total oil consumption flows through this tiny gap. It is the most critical strategic choke point on Earth. For nearly half a century, the US Navy has acted as the gatekeeper of this passage. But by the middle of 2026, the geopolitical map has shifted. Beijing is no longer content with being a passive consumer of energy. They are now using their massive navy to carve out a permanent presence in the Arabian Sea. This move into the strait is what experts call a gray zone operation. It is a tactic designed to stay just below the threshold of total war while achieving a massive strategic victory. China is betting that the United States will not risk a third world war over a single tanker. They are daring the Americans to pull the trigger first. Standing in their path is the USS Jack H. the most advanced surface combatant ever built. As the first of the Flight 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, this ship was designed specifically for this nightmare. Its heartbeat is the SPOI-6 radar system, a sensor 30 times more sensitive than anything previously deployed. It can track a bird-sized drone from hundreds of miles away while simultaneously targeting incoming ballistic missiles. Right now, the radar is painting a picture of total escalation. The Chinese destroyers are pushing the supertanker deeper into the blockade zone, using the merchant ship as a human shield. They know that an accidental strike on that tanker would create the worst environmental disaster in history. It would also provide Beijing with the perfect moral justification for a full-scale retaliatory strike. On the bridge of the Lucas, the captain watches the digital icons merge on his screen. The distance is closing rapidly. 12 miles, 10 miles. This is no longer a diplomatic misunderstanding. It is a direct challenge to the freedom of navigation. The Chinese Type 052D is a lethal adversary in its own right. Often called the Chinese Aegis, it features the Type 346A L-band radar capable of tracking multiple targets in high-clutter environments. It is armed with the YJ-18, a double-speed anti-ship missile that is a sailor's worst nightmare. The YJ-18 cruises at subsonic speeds to preserve its fuel and maximize its range, but when it reaches the final 20 miles, it accelerates to Mach 3. At that speed, the kinetic energy alone is enough to snap a destroyer in half. Against this threat, the Lucas relies on more than just its own weapons. It is part of a larger, invisible machine called the Kill Web. High above the Gulf, an E-2D Hawkeye circles at 30,000 feet. This aircraft acts as the fleet's brain, coordinating every radar pulse and missile track across the horizon. It uses NIFC-CA, a network that allows the Lucas to fire at targets its own radar cannot yet see. By linking with stealth F-35Cs nearby, the destroyer can guide its SM-6 missiles using data from a jet miles away. But technology cannot solve the human problem of the gray zone. The captain of the Lucas knows that his first shot must be perfect, or it will be his last. Suddenly, the silence in the Combat Information Center is broken by a frantic report from the sensor operator. New contacts. Multiple high-speed targets departing the Iranian coastline. The board lights up with dozens of small, fast-moving icons. This is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps' Mosquito Fleet, They are launching an asymmetric saturation attack to support the Chinese breach. Hundreds of small boats and low-cost Shahed drones are screaming toward the American ship. Their goal is not necessarily to sink the Lucas themselves. They are there to act as bait. They want to force the American destroyer to exhaust its limited supply of expensive interceptor missiles. If the Lucas fires its $4 million SM-6 missiles at $20,000 drones, it will soon be empty. And once the ship is Winchester, out of ammo, the Chinese YJ-18s will have a clear path to the target. This is the exhaustion tactic, and it is working. The radar screen is now a chaotic mess of over 100 incoming threats. The crew prepares for the first wave of the swarm. The ship's electronic shield, the Sea-Whip Block 3, begins to power up. Unlike traditional jammers, this system uses high-power microwave beams to surgically destroy drone electronics. It is a silent weapon for a loud war. But even the most advanced electronic warfare has a breaking point. The first Iranian drone crosses the 5-mile line. It is followed by a dozen more, flying low enough to hide in the sea spray. In the center of the storm, the captain of the Lucas makes his choice. He cannot wait for the swarm to reach the ship's skin. "Batteries released," he commands. The vertical launch system on the forward deck erupts in a fountain of white flame. The first interceptors roar into the night sky, their motors lighting up the ocean for miles. This is no longer a standoff. The battle for the world's energy supply has officially begun. As the first drone vanishes in a ball of fire, the Chinese destroyers suddenly turn broadside. Their missile covers are opening. The real fight is just beginning. The horizon erupts in a jagged line of white light. Dozens of high-speed signatures suddenly bloom on the Aegis display, flooding the tactical screens of the USS Jack H. Lucas. The IRGC Mosquito fleet has emerged from the coastal shadows of the Iranian shoreline. Thousands of pounds of cheap Iranian steel and high explosives are now rushing toward a multi-billion-dollar American destroyer. The strategy here is not just destruction, it is pure, calculated exhaustion. They launch Shahed and Ababil drones by the dozen, filling the air with a low mechanical hum. Each one of these drones costs less than a used car in an American suburb. To stop them, the Jack H. Lucas must commit its most precious resources. It fires SM-2 and SM-6 interceptors into the dark. Each of these missiles carries a price tag in the millions. This is the cold reality of a mathematical war. If the destroyer runs out of interceptors before the enemy runs out of cheap drones, the ship will eventually be hit. It is a battle of attrition fought at the speed of sound. 2:30 a.m. The night sky over the Strait of Hormuz is a chaotic web of white-hot streaks. Every 5 seconds, another Iranian drone vanishes in a violent sphere of orange flame. The SPY-6 radar is tracking every piece of debris falling into the black water below. But behind the slow-moving drone swarm come the real killers. Iranian C-802 missiles drop to a sea-skimming altitude, hugging the waves to evade detection. They are trying to hide in the radar clutter of the churning Arabian Sea. On the bridge of the destroyer, the air is thick with the sterile scent of recycled oxygen and the sharp tang of ozone. The AN SPY-6 V1 radar is working at its absolute peak capacity. This system is 30 times more sensitive than the legacy radars found on older Arleigh Burke ships. It sees the drones, the missiles, and even the distant wake of the Chinese destroyers shifting position miles away. But the sheer volume of incoming fire is staggering. The tactical display is a chaotic mess of red icons, each representing a potential kill shot. To survive this saturation, the destroyer needs more than just its own eyes. It needs to join a hive mind. High above the chaos, an E-2D Hawkeye circles at 30,000 feet, its massive radar domes spinning like a relentless mechanical eye. This is the fleet brain. It is not just watching the battle. It is orchestrating a digital symphony of survival across hundreds of miles of open ocean. The Hawkeye links the ship's computers to a pair of F-35C Lightning IIs lurking in the darkness. These stealth fighters are ghosts in the machine, flying with their own radars turned completely off. They are using their passive APG-81 sensors in a low probability of intercept mode. This allows them to see the enemy without being seen in return. They pinpoint the Iranian launch sites by tracking the heat signatures of the missile boosters. This data is instantly shared through the Naval Integrated Fire Control Counter Airweb. This is the NIFC-CA kill web in action. It means the destroyer does not actually need to see the target with its own radar to destroy it. It simply needs the precise GPS coordinates fed to it by the stealth jets over the horizon. An SM-6 missile erupts from its vertical launch cell with a deafening, ground-shaking roar. The missile does not look for the target immediately. It listens to the digital instructions being beamed down from the Hawkeye overhead. It arcs high into the thin air of the upper atmosphere, before diving toward a target 40 miles away. A C-802 missile is shredded by the proximity blast before it ever sees the ship. The math is shifting, but the danger is only growing. The Chinese Type 052D destroyers are watching this performance with predatory patience. They know exactly what they are seeing. They are forcing the U.S. Navy to burn through its limited magazine depth. Every successful intercept against a cheap drone is one less missile available for the real fight. On the Chinese decks, the YJ-18 missiles are already prepped and warm. These are double-speed killers designed specifically to bypass American defenses. They will cruise at subsonic speeds for most of their flight to maximize their range. Then, in the final 20 miles, they will ignite a high-thrust rocket booster. They will accelerate to Mach 3, leaving the American crew with only seconds to react. The Chinese commander is waiting for the perfect saturation point. He wants the American defense to reach its breaking point under the weight of the Iranian swarm. Meanwhile, the Iranian Mosquito fleet pushes even closer. They are within 5 miles of the Jack H now. Their small fiberglass hulls are notoriously difficult to track in the rolling 4-foot swells of the strait. They aren't just here to fire missiles. They are trying to distract the American crew and create an opening. A single lucky hit from a small drone on a radar array could blind the entire fleet. The destroyer's Phalanx close-in weapon system begins its automated tracking sequence. The sailors call it R2D2 with a gun, and it starts to growl as its barrels spin. 2:38 a.m. The chaos in the Combat Information Center is reaching a fever pitch. Multiple vampire alerts, the code for incoming anti-ship missiles, scream through the headsets of the operators. The F-35s are calling out new contacts every single second. The kill web is holding together, but it is under a level of strain never seen in a real-world engagement. The Chinese 052D begins to accelerate, pushing deep into contested waters. It is positioning itself for a devastating flank shot against the American destroyer. Its Type 346A radar has achieved a solid track on the Jack H. This is not a mistake. It is a deliberate and dangerous escalation. In the high-stakes world of modern naval warfare, a radar lock is considered the same as a finger tightening on a trigger. The atmosphere on the American bridge turns to ice. The American captain now faces an impossible choice. He can ignore the Chinese destroyer and keep focusing on the drone swarm, or he can engage the Chinese ship and risk starting a global conflict between two nuclear powers. The decision must be made in the time it takes to draw a single breath. The swarm is closing the gap, and the E-2D Hawkeye detects a terrifying new signature. It is high speed and flying at a dangerously low altitude. It is the first YJ-18. China has officially entered the kinetic fight. The supersonic missile is a different beast entirely. It ignores the traditional decoys and chaff clouds. It is homing in on the unique electronic signature of the Flight the 3's superstructure. The standard interceptors are falling short, unable to adjust to the missile's sudden burst of Mach 3 speed. Impact in 12 seconds, the tactical officer shouts over the din of the alarms. The bridge crew braces for the inevitable explosion. They can feel the vibration of the ship's massive gas turbine engines through the soles of their boots. But the American Navy has been preparing for this exact moment for decades. They have a secret card to play. It isn't another missile or a faster gun. It is a ghost in the wires. Deep within the hull, the CWIP Block 3 system hums to life with a surge of electrical power. This is the AN/SLQ-32V7, the most advanced electronic warfare suite ever deployed at sea. It does not simply jam a wide area like older systems. It performs a surgical, high-power electronic attack. The system's computers instantly calculate the exact frequency of the incoming YJ-18's active seeker head. It prepares to fire a concentrated beam of energy. This beam is so precise it can burn out a specific circuit board from miles away. The Iranian drones are still coming, but they have been relegated to a secondary threat. The battle for the Strait of Hormuz is no longer about who has the most missiles in their magazine. It is about who can dominate the electromagnetic spectrum. If the CWIP system fails to disrupt the seeker, the Jack H. becomes a billion-dollar coffin. If it works, the nature of naval warfare will be changed forever. The Chinese commander watches his tactical screen, waiting for the hit. He expects to see the American icon flicker and disappear. But something strange is happening to his missiles. They aren't missing their targets in the traditional sense. They are behaving as if they have suddenly lost their minds. They are veering off into the empty ocean, chasing digital ghosts created by the CWIP. The coordination of the Iranian drone swarm is also beginning to collapse. Drones that were flying in a tight, lethal formation are now colliding with each other in midair. The invisible hand of electronic warfare is beginning to tilt the scales back toward the Americans. 2:42 a.m. The first wave of the swarm is shattered, but the Chinese have only fired a fraction of their arsenal. This entire engagement was just a test of the American defenses. It was a way for Beijing to map the capabilities of the CWIP Block 3 in a live environment. Now, the PLA Navy knows where the American electronic shield is strongest. More importantly, they are looking for the weaknesses. The supertanker continues its slow, agonizing crawl through the heart of the strait. This merchant ship is the ultimate prize. If it passes the blockade, American influence in the region is effectively broken. If the ship is sunk, the resulting environmental disaster and economic shock will be felt for generations. The Iranian boats are regrouping for a final, desperate run. They are preparing to use themselves as physical shields for the next wave of missiles. They will die to ensure a single Chinese weapon gets through. The Arleigh Burke is frantically reloading its vertical launch tubes. The crew is working in a practiced, high-stress rhythm that feels like an eternity. Every second is a lifetime when you are the target of a nation-state. The E-2D Hawkeye reports a new wave of contacts launching from the Iranian mainland. This is no longer a localized skirmish or a gray zone operation. It has become a full-scale regional conflict involving three of the world's most powerful militaries. The F-35Cs are running dangerously low on fuel after hours of combat air patrol. Their pilots face a grueling choice: stay and defend the ship, or return to the carrier. If the stealth jets leave the area, the destroyer loses its eyes over the horizon. The kill web that has kept them alive is starting to fray at the edges. Tension on the bridge has reached a breaking point. The captain's hand hovers just inches above the strike command console. He has the power to end this by sinking the Chinese destroyer that is painting him with its radar. But he knows the cost of that choice. Once the first Chinese sailor is killed by American fire, there is no going back to diplomacy. The global economy is already shivering as oil prices spike on the news of the engagement. Every decision made in this small 20-mile stretch of water is echoing in the boardrooms of New York, London, and Beijing. The YJ-18s are circling back for a second pass. They have reacquired the target through the electronic haze. The CWIP Block 3 pulses again, sending out a massive, invisible burst of directed energy. The remaining Iranian drones begin to spiral into the sea like dying insects. It is a masterclass in soft kill technology and electronic dominance. But even the most advanced jammer in the world has a limit. It can be overwhelmed by sheer numbers and raw persistence. The Chinese commander sees the opening he has been waiting for. He signals his entire fleet with a single, chilling command. All batteries, fire. A solid wall of supersonic metal and high explosives launches into the moonless night. The American shield is about to be tested to its absolute limit. The Jack H. braces for the impact as the sky turns a brilliant, terrifying red. The math of the war has just become much more lethal. The YJ-18 missiles scream across the wavetops at Mach 3. They are 20 miles out and closing the gap in seconds. The Phalanx CIWS begins its frantic, mechanical scream. On the bridge of the Jack H. the air is thick with the scent of ozone and adrenaline. Every screen flashes amber. The Aegis system is saturated with incoming threats. But the American destroyer is not just relying on kinetic interceptors. Deep within the ship's superstructure, a silent weapon awakens. This is the CWIP Block 3. Unlike older systems that simply blind everyone in the area, The AN/SLQ-32V7 is surgical. It does not swing a hammer. It wields a digital scalpel. The system identifies the specific frequencies of the Iranian drone swarm. It calculates the exact nanosecond needed to disrupt their command links. High-power electronic beams lash out into the night. On the radar screens, the chaotic cluster of Shahed drones begins to falter. They do not explode. They simply lose their minds. The swarm begins to spiral. Dozens of drones tilt uncontrollably, their navigation systems fried by the invisible energy. They plunge into the black waters of the Arabian Sea. In less than 60 seconds, the primary asymmetric threat is neutralized. The Mosquito fleet has been swatted by a ghost, but the Chinese missiles are still coming. The Type 052D destroyer has committed to the strike. Those YJ-18s are now in their terminal phase, moving too fast for human reaction. The math of survival comes down to the AN/SPY-6V1 radar. This radar is 30 times more sensitive than anything that came before it. It tracks the supersonic missiles with terrifying precision. It feeds that data into the ship's central brain. The Jack H Lucas launches its own response. Standard Missile 6 interceptors roar out of the vertical launch cells. They are not just missiles. They are nodes in a wider network. This is the birth of the kill web. The destroyer is no longer fighting this battle alone. It is part of the Naval Integrated Fire Control Counter-Air System. High above the chaos, an E-2D Hawkeye acts as the fleet's brain. It sees the entire battlefield from the edge of space. It relays the location of the Chinese escorts to the rest of the strike group. Two F-35C Lightning IIs emerge from the darkness. They are operating in total electronic silence. Their APG-81 radars are in low probability of intercept mode. The Chinese Type 052D has no idea they are there. The stealth jets have become the eyes of the fleet. They pass targeting data directly to the SM-6 missiles already in flight. The SM-6s do not need the Jack H Lucas to guide them anymore. They are being steered by the F-35s over the horizon. This is a strike the Chinese never saw coming. The first YJ-18 is intercepted 5 miles from the ship. The explosion creates a momentary sun over the water. The shockwave rattles the hull of the American destroyer. 3 more interceptions follow in rapid succession. The sky is a graveyard of falling debris. The American shield has held, but the counterstrike is just beginning. An MQ-9 Reaper drone loiters near the Iranian coast. It detects the massive heat signature of the supertanker trying to run the blockade. That data is instantly fed into the common operational picture. The F-35s designate the Chinese destroyer's radar as a primary threat. If that radar stays active, more missiles will follow. The decision is made in a fraction of a second. A single SM-6 is redirected. It isn't aimed at the hull of the Type 052D. It is aimed at the sensor array. The missile impacts the Chinese ship's superstructure. There is no massive hull breach, but the effect is devastating. The Type 346A radar array is shattered. The Chinese ship is now blind. In modern naval warfare, a blind ship is a dead ship. The planned commander is forced to make a choice. Without radar, they cannot protect the tanker. Without radar, they cannot defend against the next wave of stealth fighters. The Chinese destroyers begin to turn away. They are retreating toward the safety of land-based batteries. The supertanker is left alone in the middle of the strait. Its escort has vanished into the electronic fog. The IRGC boats see the shift in momentum. They cut their engines and turn back toward the coast. The swarm has been broken and the primary muscle has withdrawn. By 3:15 a.m., the guns go silent. The radar screens clear. The Jack H Lucas remains on station, its hull scorched, but its systems intact. On the surface, it is a tactical victory for the United States. The blockade remains in place. The energy flow is stopped, and the gray zone breach has failed. But the strategic cost is only beginning to be calculated. In Beijing, the blinding of a destroyer is not seen as a skirmish. It is seen as a direct act of war. The global markets are already reacting. Oil prices are spiking as news of the engagement hits the wires. One night of fighting has put the global economy on a knife edge. The Strait of Hormuz remains a choke point of the world. 25% of the planet's oil is now trapped behind a wall of tension. The world watches the news with bated breath. We are no longer in the realm of deterrence. We are in the realm of consequences. Both superpowers have tasted the other's steel. The Jack H. Lucas has proven that the American shield can hold. But for how long? A saturation attack twice this size might have ended differently. This was not a total war. It was a test. It was a probe of the American kill web and its electronic warfare capabilities. China now knows how SEWIP Block 3 works. They know how the F-35 integrates with the fleet. They will adapt their tactics for the next encounter. Wars are not started by machines. They are started by the people who decide whether to launch them. Tonight, the world stayed back from the brink. But the radar arrays are still humming. The missiles are being reloaded into the vertical launch cells. The tension in the strait is higher than it has been in decades. Was this the final act of a regional crisis? Or was it the opening salvo of a global conflict? In the shadows of the Strait of Hormuz, the answer remains hidden. Every decision made tonight will ripple across the next 10 years of history. The edge of war has never felt so thin. Thank you for watching Waveborn Command. If you want to understand the technology and strategy shaping the future of global conflict, make sure to subscribe. The world is changing fast. Stay informed. Stay ahead of the curve. We will see you in the next briefing.